Here we go. Welcome back, College Football Payoff Podcast, episode 13.
Week 15.
And we are coming off not our best showing last week, but
Bad week for the syndicate.
yeah. And there was some games that just that happens in betting sometimes. You know, you win some, you lose some. But last week we're not going to dwell on it.
We were going to glaze right past it this week.
I am still, my line. I'm still 500 on the year, so 39-39. As long as I'm staying out of the red, I'm good. And last week only winning the one game, but that gives me more motivation to come back this week and pick some real winners. So I did a lot of good research.
Definitely more precise this week.
Yes, and we have news to talk about, obviously, with Ohio State, Michigan canceling. I mentioned it. We both mentioned it a few weeks back. I have been tweeting about it, that I wasn't going to be surprised when Michigan canceled their game against us, because at the time you needed 6 games in the Big Ten to play for the conference championship. And because Michigan cancels with Ohio State only has 5. So right there, they're out of the championship if the rules held up. And because we know who Kevin Warren is, we kind of had a feeling like he was not going to change his ways because he is a stubborn asshole.
Yeah, he's just royally screwed this up from the very, very beginning.
Yep. Yeah, and so I mean, we thought it was going to be a problem. News came out today that I think the Big Ten got some pretty harsh feedback from everyone in the country. So they decided to change their rules, and Ohio State is in the Big Ten championship game. It's already set against Northwestern next weekend. Here's the thing, though. With the college football playoff, it's going to be very tough for fans of Texas A&M and, teams that have played 10, 11 games to stomach Ohio State being number 4. And then if they win the conference championship, they're basically in.
Right.
And they've only played 6 games. It's going to be very tough. And I'm not just saying this because they're my team, but the college football playoff is set to get the best teams, all around best teams. And Ohio State is one of the best teams in the country.
I think so. They really need Alabama to walk all over Florida next week. They really need to show that they're better than Texas A&M, and for insurance, they really need to show that, or they really need Clemson to show that Notre Dame shouldn't be in the playoff.
Yep. So the whole Big Ten debacle, it was obviously it was a shock, but we kind of saw it coming.
We saw it coming from a mile away.
Yep.
I think we were dissing Kevin Warren on the first episode of this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
and we knew something was going to happen.
Yeah. Should he have a job next year? No.
Nope.
Will he? Yeah. They're not going to fire the Big Ten commissioner in the middle of the season.
No, and another thing was Barry Alvarez, the athletic director for Wisconsin, even came out during the week and said, the Big Ten has to change because we as a conference have to realize Ohio State's our best bet at getting a team into the playoff, so we got to do whatever we can to get them there. And I think yesterday even someone from Michigan's higher-ups even said something about, hey, Ohio State needs to represent our conference.
Oh, well, I think they're finally realizing just how much Ohio State means to the Big Ten. I mean, if they did not have Ohio State, they would this season they'd be a Group of 5 conference.
Yeah, so huge news there. As I'm spiking pencils left and right now, but we do have games this week.
Would have loved to see Ohio State and Texas A&M just schedule one together.
Yeah, that was something that was being brought up, was a game against Texas A&M, or I even saw there was let's go Ohio State-Indiana rematch, or Ohio State-Cincinnati, since they're both in the same state.
If Ohio State came out and beat Texas A&M, I'd have no problem at all with them being in the college football playoff.
I agree. In hindsight, it would be the best thing to have 4 and 5 play.
Oh, yeah.
Which, if you think about it from now on, though, with the college football playoff, if they stay with the 4 teams, that could be a real possibility, is having 4 and 5 play kind of like a a buffer match,
or
to
even
see.
6 teams, and have the 2 semi, or have the 1 and 2 have a
Quarterfinal.
bye. Yeah,
Yeah, you play quarterfinal games. I've always wanted there to be 8 teams
Mm-hmm.
in the playoff, 3 rounds, but right now, especially in 2020, that would have been really cool to see.
Yeah.
4 versus 5, winner basically gets the 4 seed. But that's how it's going to go. All right. We do have a little bit of a slate here. Most of the games this week, conference championships are all but decided right now.
right.
So these games are kind of formality, but you do have some pretty good matchups out there. And I will start it off if that is all right with you. You ready to get into some picks?
Let's go.
All right. I'm going to start with the SEC, LSU at Florida. 23.5 point favorite is Florida. Over under 68. This is a 7 o'clock game on ESPN. This is one of those games where Florida is already in the SEC championship, and they're going up against Alabama. So we know that game is set. The winner of that game, basically college football playoff.
Yes.
I think if Alabama loses that game, I'm not sure if you can put them in, but they might. We don't know yet. Depends on the ACC as well. There's a lot to dive into on that. But sticking with this game, they're looking to get that much-needed momentum to go into that game against Alabama. After seeing what Bama did to LSU last week, I think you can pretty much bet the house that they are going to be trying to duplicate or even one-up that performance this weekend. So we know Kyle Trask, Mac Jones, the two basically Heisman hopefuls at this point. Trask saw what Jones did last week to the Tiger defense. And seeing as they're battling for that Heisman spot, Trask knows that he needs to put on an absolute show to make his case for the award. He's having a great season. 71% of his passes have been completed, over 3,200 yards and 38 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. We all know he's a good quarterback, and he has a major weapon. We've talked about it multiple times. Best tight end in the country, probably one of the best draft prospects in Kyle Pitts. Their offense as a whole it's one of the best in the country. They put up 500 yards per game, and they've just been on fire ever since they had that 3-point loss against Texas A&M. So I think this is a tune-up game before the SEC championship, and right now there's no better tune-up opponent than LSU. They're just having a dumpster fire of a season, even after winning the national championship last year. Last week, 29-point underdogs against Alabama, and they were just blown to pieces. Saban had his way with them. And you could tell during that game, Orgeron on the sideline was livid. He was spiking headsets.
He spiked his headset after the Devontae Smith touchdown.
Man.
I haven't seen him act like that.
And, that's a sign that things are starting to boil over for him. And
He's ready to get rid of Pope Pelini, too.
Yeah. It also seems like those frustrations are affecting the team and how serious the players are about this game. Their starting tight end, Eric Gilbert, considering opting out for the rest of the season because his body hurts, quote unquote. That's what he said.
Nice.
So you got that going on. Starting quarterback Miles Brennan is going to be out with an oblique injury, and we know that their star wide receiver Terrace Marshall Jr. already opted out a few weeks ago. So their offense is depleted. They have issues on defense. It looks like it's going to be another disaster. And if you want to talk about a mismatch of epic proportions, Gator offense versus Tiger defense in terms of national ranking. Florida, first in passing, 12th in total yards, 10th in scoring. LSU, 125th in passing allowed, 115th in total defense, 95th in points scored. This game could possibly be covered by halftime. And I think because it's a tune-up, the Gators will get that nice, comfortable cover to make the statement.
Oh, yeah.
They'll get the cover to make the statement. Then they're going to make sure to get their starters off the field to prepare for next week. But I still think that he has to keep the spread. He has to keep the cover in order to prove that, you know, we're college football playoff worthy. We're going to win the SEC. If not, we should still possibly be considered for 4 if something happens to Ohio State.
I think they'd beat Notre Dame very easily.
Yes.
I'd rather see an Alabama, Clemson, Florida, Ohio State playoff more than anything.
Yep.
I do not want to watch Notre Dame just get blown out like they do every time they make it.
Right. So LSU, they just don't have enough firepower offensively. Florida's 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 home games versus LSU. And LSU's 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 games following a double-digit loss at home. We're going Florida minus 23.5.
Boom.
So.
All right. I'm going to head down to Memphis, who's hosting Houston. 12 o'clock kickoff, over under 62.5. Houston's 3-3, haven't played a game since November 14th. Memphis is 6-3, but they've had a very, very ugly season compared to what they were expected to. Houston is your typical Dana Holgorsen football team. Like I've seen so many years at West Virginia when he was the head coach there, they win the games that they're supposed to. They lose the games they're not supposed to. They are supposed to win this game. Memphis has still, after 9 games, one of the worst defenses in the country, allowing 453 yards a game. Although Houston hasn't played since November 14th, we've already seen this year that when teams have been able to take a full month off and have this metaphorical mini mid-season training camp where they can improve on a lot of different things physically and schematically, these type of teams come out hot. We saw that with Georgia Tech last week. And then there's 3 comparable games that these teams have played. These 2 teams have shared opponents with Tulane, Navy, and USF. In every single one of these games against the common opponents, Houston has exceeded Memphis greatly. This is Memphis' 4th game in a row, and they're pretty beaten up. They haven't really been able to move the ball too well. Back earlier this year, they played Navy on the 28th, won 10-7. Navy's a terrible team. We'll get to that later in the podcast. But they also almost let a terrible South Florida team beat them. They came back with down 14 in the 4th quarter to win that game. And when we look at Houston, who just played South Florida a month ago, they beat them by 35 points. Houston is just better all around, although they came out really undisciplined at the beginning of the year with 5 turnovers in their first game. Clayton Tune, their starting quarterback since then, has only thrown 4 picks and 10 touchdowns. He has picked it up along with the rest of the team when it comes to the sloppiness, and I don't see that lasting after this metaphorical mini camp they've had. Give me Houston Cougars laying 5 on the road at 12 p.m. Memphis' defense is just sorry. After 9 games, they're not going to be able to fix anything. I like junior quarterback Clayton Tune to lead these Houston Cougars to a victory by close to 2 touchdowns.
All right, good pick. Okay, moving right along, we're going to go quick tonight. Coastal Carolina, 13.5-point favorites at Troy. The over-under is 51.5. 3 o'clock game. For some reason, they keep putting Coastal on ESPN+. So that's how I'm going to start this, by saying last week was the best game of the season in college football by far.
That was awesome. And
shame on ESPN for not showcasing that game on their network. First of all, tell me what is the point of sending College Game Day to Coastal Carolina if you're not going to show the game on your major network? You send your College Game Day crew out there, and then you put them on ESPN Plus, a channel that not everybody gets, that you basically have to go and subscribe for. It's pointless. Instead, during that time slot, they decide, let's put Clemson and Virginia Tech on ESPN. Let's gather around to watch that game. That game had no hype to it.
Not at all.
No one cared about that game. And, I mean, what is more appealing than a game that's coined the Mormons versus the Mullets?
I love that game.
I
love that saying.
Like, if I see that, I want to watch that game. Both teams, especially with BYU saying any team, anytime, anywhere, and Coastal just being a party school that looks like they have the most fun ever on a football team, why would you not show that on your main channel?
And the blue field.
Yeah.
And College Game Day was there.
That's it. So the game had, and this game had everything you could imagine. It had that bench clearing scuffle right before half where
Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson was getting blocked by two guys pretty aggressively.
That's what those guys are coached to do. And,
it's pretty funny.
When a quarterback throws an interception, the defense is coached to go after the quarterback and go after the wide receiver that it was intended for first.
Yep.
What Zach Wilson should have done is he should have stayed on the ground.
Yeah,
he should have just stayed there.
Up.
Just don't get up.
So you had that, and then all the way down to the very last play of the game, last second, it was 1 yard short. They made a stop. It was an incredible game throughout.
And I thought that game was going to start a lot differently as we saw BYU score a 91-yard passing touchdown on the first play of the game that got called back by holding. So, that could have set the whole game in a different tone, but Coastal was able to luckily rebound after that.
Game of the year by far. And because of that, people around the nation are now waiting to see if Coastal is the best group of 5 team in the country. And I guess you could say there was some talk of maybe them sneaking into the college football playoff, but let's be honest, it's not going to happen. They're still going to be a New Year's Six team.
They should be. They deserve to be showcased if they're going to be on ESPNU for the whole season.
Yeah. So an undefeated season for them, and their defense, the Black Swarm, Coastal Carolina, has been just a top defense in the country. They give up just 16.8 points per game. They hold opposing offenses to 330 yards a game, and that defense is going to be a key in this one. Coastal's very good. Troy's is very weak. Troy's defense is allowing just over 24 a game, but they give up close to 400 yards per game. And Troy's defense is going up against an offense that scores around 37 a game. That puts up close to 500 yards a game. No big deal. This also includes a rushing attack for Coastal that has around 228 yards per game. It's going to be tough for Troy to stop that offense. And when Troy does get the ball, I think it could be even tougher for them against the Coastal defense. Troy scoring around 26 a game, but they're only able to run the ball on average about 100 yards per game. It's going to be troublesome because Coastal's rush defense is pretty good, and their passing defense is probably just as good, maybe a little bit better. So I know what you're thinking with this one. It's a classic letdown spot. Coming off that huge win against BYU, talks of the New Year's Six Bowl, undefeated season. Yeah, it sounds like letdown-ish, like, all right, we got our big win. We're still high on it, but Coastal's just too good, and they're flying too high right now. Not to mention, they are undefeated for a reason. And on the season, they're one of the best teams against the spread. They're 8-1-1 against the spread. So if it's not broke, why fix it?
Right.
I'm going to ride with them, and I might even grow my mullet out this year. I got somewhat of a flow going now, so I think I might, if they win this game, if they win me some money, I'm going to show up with a mullet this time next year.
Tribute to Coastal.
Yep, Coastal Carolina minus 13.5 is the play.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to take it down to Bowling Green, who's hosting Miami of Ohio this weekend.
Maction?
Yes, a little Maction for you, even though it's on a Saturday. Miami of Ohio is laying 24 points on the road, 12 o'clock kickoff, over under 49.5. And this purely is a fade Bowling Green play. Bowling Green was in potentially the worst matchup of the two worst teams I've ever seen take a field last week. And what did Bowling Green do in that game? They lost by 4 touchdowns to Akron, who hasn't won a game since 2018. So Bowling Green has no offense at all. And as a matter of fact, their offense, whatever they like to call it, is non-existent. Their offense only scores 11.4 points per game. They're only able to throw for 142 yards per game. And then on the other side of the ball, their defense is already allowing 310 yards on the ground a game through 5. So they've given up over 1,500 yards on the ground through 5 games this year, and they allow an average of 45 points per game. Miami beat Akron 38-7, who Akron turned around and beat Bowling Green last week 31-3. All this transitive property doesn't always work, but I see it. I have no idea how Miami's spread could be this low. I think it should be up towards in the 30s, maybe 29.5, 30 range. And Miami of Ohio is 2-1 on the season. They have victories over Akron and Ball State. They did lose to Buffalo, but if you read the fine print, their starting quarterback did not play that game. So Brett Gabbert, who's a really good leader for this Miami Redhawks offense, has 384 yards on the season with 4 touchdowns. He's in the game, they win. When he's in the game, the offense moves. I don't care if Miami of Ohio would play with 9 people on defense this week. Bowling Green probably isn't scoring a point. I would say Miami's good for at least 30. And if we look at earlier the season after the first game that Miami won over Ball State by 7 points, their head coach made it clear after the game that after that win, maybe the bookmakers in Vegas will give them a little bit more respect. So we know from that statement that this is a very, very spread conscientious coach. And do we like taking spread conscientious coaches? Of course. So we're going to go with Miami of Ohio minus 24.
We need more of that in college football, by the way.
Lane Kiffin's a huge one.
Yeah.
When Lane wakes up on a Sunday morning after a win or loss, he's already checking the opening line report. So.
Yeah, we need more of that. We need to start opening up that culture a little bit in
Yes.
sports because it's what people watch games
If the
for.
reporters are going to do it, why not let the coach? Well, there's too many technicalities, especially at the college level.
You think throwing games and all that,
But who cares? I think it adds to the entertainment value.
I'd watch it. All right. Action, love it. Next game, Illinois at Northwestern. Northwestern's 14.5-point favorites. The over-under is 41. Noon kickoff, ESPN2. So some people, they're saying that Lovie Smith, could be on the hot seat depending on the outcome, or he already is on the hot seat prior to this game. And when those rumors start to surface, a few things can happen within a program. One, the players will pay extra attention to the headlines and fight their asses off for their coach.
Yes.
Or two, the players pay extra attention to the headlines and they get lost
And
in
they
the
want
headlines.
a new coach.
They either want a new coach or they forget about the game plan against that week's opponent. Whichever way you look at it, the players know what's going on,
Right.
and they know what is at stake.
But good for them. Illinois does love Lovie.
Exactly. Lovie Smith is a coach that is loved by his players. So I would say they're going to be trying to rally behind him on this one. Do I think they're going to win the game? Not necessarily, but I think they're going to put up a pretty damn good fight, and they'll keep the game closer than the 2-score spread.
Yes.
Illinois has won 2 of their last 3 games after losing last week to Iowa, 35-21. So that's a 14-point loss. And I don't know if you'd back me on this, but I think Iowa is a better team than Northwestern.
Yeah, I do think Northwestern's a little bit overrated. They've had one of the easier schedules in the Power 5 this year, so I could agree with that.
Yeah, and Northwestern is coming off a heartbreaking loss. It snapped their perfect season last time out, and that was to a pretty bad Michigan State team. To make matters worse was that they had to let that marinate for an extra week after having their game last week called off due to COVID. So, they could have had that extra time to game plan against Illinois, but it seems more likely to me that a crushing loss like that was more of a topic on their minds of the players than getting ready to face a 2-4 Illinois team. All right. Quarterback Peyton Ramsey for Northwestern, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions in that game. And, yeah, he threw for 210 yards. The rest of the offense was only able to gain 75 yards. They were held in check by Michigan State, who's not good. Also, the Wildcats, they've only won 1 game this year by more than 14 points, and that was the first week against Maryland when people had no idea what was going on with quarterbacks or things like that. So they've played tight games all year, but they've managed to pull out those victories, which has them already locked into the Big Ten championship game. They will be facing Ohio State. So the key there is that they're already in that game. They're not undefeated anymore, so it's this way. They're not undefeated. They already have a spot in their conference championship game. This game basically means nothing in terms of college football playoff and conference championship qualification. That sounds more like a letdown spot to me than anything.
They're in a terrible sandwich spot.
And going up against a coach who is fighting for his job, yeah, I think I'm going to roll with the Fighting Illini to cover this game. Illinois 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 road games, and 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 as road underdogs, while Northwestern is 1-5 against the spread following a straight-up loss, 1-5-2 against the spread versus a team with a losing record. And in the last 5 matchups between the two teams, the road team is 5-1 against the spread. We're going Illinois plus 14.5.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, terrible sandwich spot for Northwestern. Weak schedule for Northwestern. Lovie Smith fighting.
A coach fighting for his job. A loved coach fighting for his job.
Yes. All right. I'm going to take it down to Miami, where I think is probably one of the best matchups of the week.
Yep.
Number 17, North Carolina Tar Heels are going down to Coral Gables to face the number 10 Miami Hurricanes. North Carolina sitting at 7-3 right now on Miami's 8-1. Saturday kickoff at 3:30, over under 67.5. Like I said, this is going to be a showcase of 2 elite quarterbacks with next level caliber talent. Sam Howell on the year is thrown for 3,129 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Meanwhile, De'Aaron King on the other side of the field has thrown for 2,334 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions, while also adding 467 yards on the ground. The only difference really between these two teams is that North Carolina has an arsenal of weapons on their team. Miami doesn't really have a bona fide superstar outside of De'Aaron King. And that's why I'm going to roll with UNC plus the points this week, plus 3. So let's just name off all the bullets that Sam Howell has in his gun at quarterback there. In the backfield with him, he's got Michael Carter at running back. He's got 937 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. Also, right behind Carter in the backfield is Javonte Williams, another running back. He's also an over 900-yard rusher with 16 touchdowns. At wideout, I have one of my favorite players in the nation, Dynamic Brown. He's a dynamic player. 932 yards receiving and 8 reception touchdowns. And then on the other side of him, they have wide receiver Daz Newsome, who has over 600 yards and 5 touchdowns this year through the air. Also on top of that, Carter and Williams, the running back, have combined for 5 receiving touchdowns. So Sam Howell's got people to throw to all over the field. Miami, on the other hand, doesn't have a bona fide superstar. It's way easier to game plan against a team that pretty much has one superstar threat compared to 5. But really, this game is going to depend on what version of North Carolina we get this week. This is the same North Carolina team that lost to Florida State. This is the same, which is absolutely diabolical. This is also the same North Carolina team that lost to Virginia. Now, Miami only beat Virginia 44-41 or 19-14. My bad. That was NC State. But they beat the dog shit out of Florida State. I really don't think that North Carolina is going to take the foot off the gas, especially after last week. They played Western Carolina. They were favored by 50 points, won by 40, but they're really not beat up coming off of that loss compared to what they would have been coming off of a Notre Dame loss. I think UNC with the right formula on offense, I think they win. I think they cover. I like UNC plus 3 at Miami.
Yeah, I actually do have a play in this game. I'm going to go with the over 67.5. Everything that you hit on there. I mean, the big thing is Sam Howell.
Yes.
Over 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns. And there's also a stat that I saw. So over the past 2 seasons, he is leading all college quarterbacks in most 20-plus yard touchdowns. He has 30. That's leading UFC quarterback Dylan Gabriel, so you know what kind of an offense they have.
Love Dylan Gabriel
and
over on this pod.
Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields, who every week seems like he throws a couple of deep balls for touchdowns. The kid can sling it.
Yes.
And you mentioned Carter and Williams in the backfield. They're both going to hit 1,000 yards probably. 2 1,000-yard runners. All right, they're combined for 23 touchdowns on the ground. I mean,
5 through the air.
right.
They're
So
almost at 30 touchdowns for 2 running backs.
So you have a quarterback who throws the ball, and Miami's defense I don't think is very good against the pass. Derek King, yeah, he doesn't have weapons, but he's also a guy who can make plays happen. All right, he's a playmaker at quarterback, and I'm not saying he's going to run, but I'm saying his feet get him out of the pocket to open up plays downfield. And I think that this is going to be a shootout. I think a lot of throwing, big plays down the field. Sam Howell, he's known for that. I think this is a high-scoring game. Both teams, in both of their last games, I think both teams scored, 40-plus points?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Miami put 49 on Duke. But, both teams going over 40 points in their last game, they have the firepower. And I think defense is going to kind of be like a non-factor here. If you're saying the over-under is set at 67.5 and it's a 3.5-point spread, that's telling me that Vegas thinks there's going to be a lot of points scored.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going with the over. I think it's going to hit. The over is 5-1 in North Carolina's last 6 as road underdogs, and it's 4-1 in their last 5 conference games. So you're taking Carolina plus the points. I'm going the over 67.5.
I like it. We're probably going to see over 1,000 yards of offense production.
Yeah, it'll be a fun game to get us set for conference championships next week. Okay, so that was yours. I'm going to do my last one. I'm going to go to the Big Ten. I got to get my fix of the Big Ten as much as I can. Minnesota at Nebraska. Nebraska is a 10.5-point favorite. The over-under is 59. It's a noon kickoff. We don't know what channel yet because of the whole Ohio State-Michigan cancellation. Minnesota and Nebraska, underwhelming, underachieving seasons this year. Both teams only have 2 wins on the season, and this game is more or less bragging rights and feel good to end the season. It's going to be Minnesota's first game in over 3 weeks, and Nebraska will be going for their first 2-game winning streak of the season. So I was not too high on Nebraska before this season or at any point during the season, but I thought, as I think most people did in the country, I thought Minnesota would have had a way better year under P.J. Fleck. Tanner Morgan, their quarterback, has been subpar at best. He's 59% completion rate, just over 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Rashad Bateman, their star receiver, announced he is opting out of the rest of the season. That is the second time that he has opted out this year. He's doing that to focus on the draft, so you don't have that threat anymore. He really wasn't doing too much in their passing game.
He was just hurting himself. The longer he stays around at that program this year, the more damage he does to his draft stock.
Yep. And Minnesota, they are going to be out 20-plus players due to COVID protocols. The only bright spot on the team has been the rushing game, averaging close to 200 a game behind Mohamed Ibrahim. 817 yards, 13 touchdowns. Another thing to note is that Minnesota has scored 34 points, at least 34 points, in 3 of the last 4 games. And their defense allows around the same amount of points per game. Defense is allowing about 34. I would like to think that Fleck is going to have his guys ready to finish the season after missing the last 2 games. And, he's a motivational guy, so I think they'll be ready to play. But we move on to Nebraska now, where it seems starting quarterback question might have finally been answered. Last game of the year, but we got our quarterback, right? Adrian Martinez, back on Scott Frost's good side.
Better late than never.
Yep. After the solid performance he had last week against Purdue, slated to start the season finale. He threw for a season-high 242 yards, only 1 touchdown, but he also had 2 on the ground. And it sounds like reports came out where when he was demoted, he actually gained a ton of respect from his teammates because he stepped up as more of a leader in the locker room. Now guys are going to be playing a lot harder for for a quarterback that does that after getting benched. Rather
Man,
than sulking.
when you see a guy respond to such a demoralizing action like that, that makes you gain the trust of your teammates.
Yeah. Nebraska's offense, I mean, they're 23 points per game. I think that kind of motivation in the locker room and teammates pulling together ups their production. Nebraska's defense does give up a good amount of yards and points. They give up around 32 points a game, 400 yards a game, 175 of which are on the ground. So we have two teams that can move the ball on the ground, two defenses that give up points, and two teams that cannot stop the run. Smells like an over bet to me.
Over 59.
Yep. So Adrian Martinez coming off that best game of the year. Minnesota still has offensive weapons in Morgan, Ibrahim, and Otman Bell. Minnesota's going to be able to run the ball. Both teams will have difficulty stopping the ball on defense. Points will be plenty. Over 59, and for no reason at all other than maybe PJ Fleck might get his team a little more hyped to end the season than Nebraska will, I'm going to be putting Minnesota on the money line moneymaker.
Boom.
Plus 240 in this one.
Love it. All right. I'm going to end the pod today with a classic game that everybody watches every year. But it's moved up a little bit this year in terms of the rest of the college football season. And that's going to be the Army-Navy game. Now, this is the first time in a long time that this game isn't played at the neutral site. So usually this game is played at the Eagles Stadium in Philadelphia, Lincoln Financial Field. But this year, due to COVID and all the bullshit that comes with it, Army is going to be hosting this game up at West Point, and I like them. Army's laying 6.5 against Navy. Army's at 7-2 on the year, while Navy's sitting at 3-8 in a very sorry state. This game is a 3 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. Over-under is the lowest I've seen in this game in a very long time at 38 points. Army has home field advantage, and this is just simply a tale of two teams that are very similar schematically that have had completely opposite results in the season. Navy and Army, we know, run both the same offense, essentially the same defense. But if we compare their season stats on the year, Navy is only scoring 18.4 points a game, while Army's putting up 30.6. Navy is allowing over 32 points a game, while Army is really one of the best defenses in the league, in the country, only allowing 16.3 points a game. Mm-hmm. Both of these teams practice against this offense every day in practice. They see it. They can't get away from it. This is essentially the only offense you can run at military academies. So the defenses aren't going to struggle too much. And it's just going to come down to who's better. It's really obvious that this year, Army is ridiculously better. Mm-hmm. Although they only average 50 yards a game through the air, they're putting up 296.7 yards per game on the ground. If we look at the other side of the field, Navy is allowing 212.6 rushing yards a game. Although Navy goes against this type of offense every day in practice, they cannot stop the run. I know Army-Navy games are supposed to be close. This year is definitely going to break that rule. We said earlier in the pod, or I said, that teams coming off of a 4-week break this season, essentially a metaphorical mini camp in the mid-season, triple M there for you. But they usually do really well coming out of the gate from this mini camp. Well, Navy had that this year. 3 games ago, they played SMU, and that was on Halloween night, where they lost 51-37. They came out the week after, or 4 weeks after, played Memphis, lost 10-7. So they don't know what's going on. And on top of that, they played Tulsa's third-string quarterback last week and only scored 6 points while allowing 19. They did not cover last week. They did cover against Memphis, but they're 4-5 against the spread this year. Army's 5-4 against the spread. I think Army's going to improve to 6-4 on the spread this year. Give me Army minus 6.5.
Yep, I'm always pro Army in this game.
And I've also never seen an over/under open at under 40 for this game. It usually opens around like 43.5, 44, and then gets bet down so much because that's just natural for these games every year.
Yeah.
To open at 38 and stay there, Vegas really doesn't think Navy's going to put up points here, and that's why I really like Army this week.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean that's just
a fantastic point. Actually, I like that a lot. Good call, man. Jeez, coming up with the nuggets. All right, well that's our card. Let's go ahead and recap. I got Florida minus 23.5, Coastal Carolina minus 13.5, Illinois plus 14.5, the over 67.5 in North Carolina, Miami, the over 59 in Minnesota, Nebraska, and the moneyline moneymaker, Minnesota plus 240. It's my episode 13
week 15
card. All right, what do you got?
All right, Big Country's week 15 card. I got 4 locks for you this week. First off, we're going with Houston minus 5, Miami of Ohio minus 24, North Carolina plus 3, and Army minus 6.5. Looking to go 4-0 this week, and we're going to be back next week with conference championships.
Yep, that's what I was about to say. Get ready next week. Yes. Every conference championship game will be covered. Huge games. It's going to be a start of our kind of
bowl season.
Yeah. So, like we said, it's going to be conference championship games, and then every single bowl game that is going to be played, we will have plays for you.
Yes.
So be sure to like, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, iTunes, Spotify. Make sure you share it with all your friends, all your buddies. It's bowl season.
A lot of these championship games are already set in stone, so you guys can expect some really good nuggets coming at you next week when it comes to research.
Yes. So follow us on Twitter at College Football Payoff Pod.
CF Payoff Pod.
Sorry, I keep getting it wrong.
All good. It doesn't
all right,
really matter.
CF Payoff Pod on Twitter. What's your handle?
Big Country Bets.
I'm Accountant Bets. And then you also got us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. Basically anywhere you get podcasts, we are there now.
Right, and even when you type in College Football Payoff, we're not big enough yet for the AI systems to not think that we're accidentally trying to type in College Football Playoff. So if you're on YouTube, it'll actually take you directly to the College Football Playoff rather than us. So make sure you click that. You definitely want to be watching the College Football Payoff.
There's an easy way to get around that. Go to our Twitter page. All right, we got the link in our bio. Click the link.
Subscribe.
Takes you to our page. You subscribe. And then when you go to search us, you don't even have to search us on YouTube. You go right over to the left side where it has your subscriptions. Click our page. New episode right there.
Yes. Like, subscribe, rate, review, and most of all, share, guys.
That's how you do it. All right, man. You got anything else?
Nope.
All right. We'll do it. Good weekend and happy betting.